The law of freedom. Your life is probably more unpredictable and harder than it actually needs to be. I don't think that you're lazy, incapable. I think that your life is unpredictable because you were never taught the thing that turned chaos into predictability. And predictability, done the right way, changes everything. It makes you sustainable. Because when you can't predict outcomes, you can't build confidence, business, you can't even trust yourself. So you work hard, you try to learn, but half the time you feel you're trying to throw darts blindfolded without knowing if you're even going to win, with all the effort that you are probably making grinding your ass off. That is exhausting. And I know it because I have been there. But I understand that there is a pattern, a structure, that it hides underneath almost everything. In business, psychology, in learning human behavior, even on how your own brain works. And once I understood it, a lot of things that seemed complicated at first suddenly became embarrassingly simple. So now in this video, I will show you why some people get extraordinary results from ordinary efforts, why working harder is going to actually make things worse, how your subconscious actually keeps dragging you into your old version, and what is actually happening there. Also, why most advice that you hear online almost always fails before it even starts. And also, I will give you the hidden structure that turns uncertainty into sustainability. And beware, because this is the same structure that has helped humans reach the moon, has made the device you're looking at this from right now, has built entire civilizations, created into artificial intelligence, saved us from COVID-19 and organized reality so it is understandable. But nobody explained it to me properly, so I want to explain it to you so you don't suffer. And guess what is the core thing about this video? Systems! But wait, people are not conscious of the amount of knowledge they need to know prior to building a system in their lives. I know that so many people have already told you in social media, in Twitter, in Instagram, whatever, to build systems, but they don't tell you the whole truth. So what I'm saying here, for example, is they give you a lollipop, but they immediately take it away from you because they didn't tell you everything so you can actually apply it. I want to give you the full info. And the first core claim that I want to make is that a system is a collection of processes sorted to convert an input into a specific output. That is, you have an input. Oh, let me use this hand. You have an input. You let that input follow certain steps to be refined, to be processed. And then at the end, you get an output. Systems, when designed, they have a function. That is the objective, truthful result that you're gonna get, even if you like it or not. Whereas you can also have an intention that aligns or not with that function that it had. Because the intention is the final result that you want. So let me show you real quick. Among some other, some diagrams that I have, that business, for example, is essentially one single system with little systems inside, with infrastructure around it, and truthful and beneficial info that make the process give the function that we want. So to put this in perspective, if you drink, you know that the intention is to drink something. You have something, your water going through your throat. The input here, for example, might be a thought. So therefore you lift the glass. Then you lift the glass, then make the glass be near your face, then put your lips on the glass, lift the glass slightly, take a sip, and brain signals, I drank. But the thing is that each little step is also a little system. For example, to lift the glass, you need to turn the thought into brain signal, which then sends electricity, specifically ions, through your nervous system, so it shocks the elbow, so it lifts. And every time you add a little system, that sum is resistance. So if you are already trying to improve yourself, that is amazing. I respect you a lot. Because what you're doing is that you have your nervous system, your muscular system, your bones, your tons of things in your biological organic prediction machine that is your brain and your body. And yet, you want to build business. You want to learn something amazing. You want to give something to the world. You want to develop yourself, run a marathon or whatever that you're trying to do. So first of all, don't feel guilty, because it might be difficult to be disciplined and stuff like this if you still have that problem. You have tons of resistance, of course. And actually, if you manage to be absolutely disciplined with all this resistance that you have in your body, with all your inner biological processes, I think you're unstoppable. Now, to make it clear, like here I made a mistake. This system has an infrastructure because you are the one making the input. But you also could have, for example, a bot, an automation, a machine. It doesn't have to be AI doing the work for you. That is the machine or the thing that is making the work, making the input so you get the output. And here is where the real leverage is. So inputs have a big impact on the function and output of a system. Because of course, garbage in means garbage out. So if you want to prepare the best omelette in history, if you get rotten eggs, what is going to happen? So now I think that's really obvious. And therefore, now for the outputs, the real thing that results from turning something into something else by following certain steps is the output. And you could take one step output from a step if you want. The less friction, the purest and biggest the output. Because the system has through the output. This means that, or you can better think about it as a wheel. Or no, as tires in a car. When you use it, it's gonna degrade itself. For example, every day that you're working, you are already in a little system that your brain has put you in to make things predictable. But guess what? At the end, if you worked or even just ate and did your human stuff, you're probably gonna be tired at the end of the day. If there was not so much resistance, you will still be energetic, but guess what? Your brain and your inner processes are sucking up all the energy. Now, systems efficiency depends on how quickly and effectively inputs becomes valuable. Outputs, despite timing delays or capacity restriction. So you can think of it like a funnel. You want to make your funnel as wide as possible, depending on the output. Now, for example, in a sales funnel, what I'm saying here, I'm gonna be honest with you, I think the wording is not really good because it seems like I'm completely processing and factory humans. Now, what I'm saying is that when you're offering something, services, products, and all this stuff, the people that you can help, that you can actually change their lives with your stuff, they get friction throughout your process. And the more friction there is, of course, they are gonna buy less from you. And throughout the way, you're probably gonna lose leads, of course. You can take also those leads and put them into other processes that are gonna turn them into qualified as well. Now, friction is the biggest enemy of getting a big output. It is resistance. And so when a system, for example, processes humans like in sales, it has very big friction and it is a big skill to master. But that will give you tons of results because everything that is in your life right now came because someone contributed to you first. So at first, the universe, it had to be created, not sucked up by a black hole or all particles interact with each other. They contribute to each other at a point where they create living beings, and at some point, animals they contribute to each other even if they eat themselves, eat between each other. And so at the end, you would sit here as you are. And for you to live, your parents had to give you stuff. And for them to give you stuff, they had to work for a company probably or have their own. And for that, they had to serve customers. And the customers contributed to that company. So that's why probably the universe and all economics and stuff are essentially made for contribution, and you can call it love if you want. Now, we know that processes work because feedback is stimuli that tells you something ended up being a certain way. Like when you cook and expect a delicious dish, but it smells like burnt wooden stick. Feedback simply is the result you perceive from reality. So it might not be the purest thing that you had as an input, but it is what you see and perceive. Look at the output produced by processing an input, looking at each step until we see what exact step is broken, because the desired output is not being produced. So now here is a little summary of the scientific method, which is iteration, evolution, and the core thing of this, because for the function of a system to produce the intended outcome, you have to iterate and use, guess what? The scientific method. So first of all, formulate hypotheses. In science, you refer to stuff that you can swap or replace as variables. That's why they are variable. And in science, you refer to stuff that stays as is and is not changed as constants. So a group of variables and constants we act upon so they produce a desired outcome is called an hypothesis. So that's why when you see a software, a game, and stuff like that, you're gonna see version 1.3 and stuff like this. So for example, a car as a whole is essentially an hypothesis as well, because it has certain variables like wheels, engine, bodywork, or seats, and all of that you can change if you want. But as a quick thing that I'm gonna talk about, you can change it if you want, but if you change it, you're not gonna get the same function. So to formulate correctly, we need to know, first of all, what are the variables? So everything is a variable when you are formulating, and that is key. So you can swap an engine for or the wheels or the bodywork and even get a brand new hypothesis car. But when it comes to executing and testing, only what changes while the test runs is a variable. So, for example, an engine is no longer a variable when you're trying to do a car. Why? Well, because if you want the concept, the hypothesis of a car, it needs to have an engine to at least run, right? It is a constant thereafter, because you will be using the same engine throughout the test until we formulate again and therefore becomes a variable we can swap based on feedback. In this world, you can be extremely creative, but what matters is that you are combining the things that are gonna work so that you get this function that you want. And when you know those things that you need that are probably gonna give you the results, you're gonna set them and block them and lock them as constants. So once you hit start, those choices becomes hard constants. You define it. A driver can change the engine or the grading scale while the car is moving, because results, of course, might be inaccurate. The environment we test in also should be a hard constant if you want the most accurate results. So you can think about evolution again. For example, formulation. A mutation happens, where a variable change in DNA when being formulated, that is, in the womb. With execution, the animal has to survive with that mutation as if it's constant for its entire life. But in the formulation, it was a variable. Then the feedback. If the execution results in death, that formulation is deleted. If it results in survival, that variable becomes a permanent constant for the next generation, as long as it is within KPI. And for living beings, what is the KPI? Being alive. That is that it works and you don't touch it until otherwise happens. So you have to set which are the variables. Then you have to set how much of each variable. Then how long it will take for an accurate feedback. Because for example, you could test at the same time location with the same phone, dialing a specific amount of times, talking about cold calling, during a certain number of days to test the effectiveness of a hook and a script that you do not change. And then the step 2 is testing the hypothesis. So for example, we have here a car with square wheels. Let's assume that car with square wheels has great performance under boring mechanical stuff, like the engine bay system accelerates, which is the output, when you press the pedal. That was a variable, the thing about the engine bay system and pedals and stuff, but you tested it in a way that ultimately gave you the function that you want, so that is locked, that is now a constant. Or for example, the steering wheel systems, the system of the steering wheel makes the wheels rotate the way you rotate the steering wheel. So now the wheel rotation with the square tire system and the engine bay system are now constants. They don't change. Now of course the RPMs, the speed, the rotation, degrees of the wheels, the convergence and all this stuff. The depreciation of the wheels, those are the variables. And we are looking at specific ones. So for example, we could look at the friction or the speed. For example, that probably that car is not gonna last a long time. So right now we could say that this car is the version 1 of the hypothesis. So this is version 1.0. Now the step 3 is to observe results. That is, gather feedback. So the more correct information you have when formulating the hypothesis, the nearer the goal will be. Your most successful version will be the baseline of all your next hypotheses. If you change a variable when formulating and the result after testing with enough volume, time, and constants, that you said before was better than your last system, that is the new baseline. If you changed a variable when formulating and the result was worse than your last system, that baseline does not change. That is, you're gonna start from the last version you were in that resulted very good. What we aim for is for the hypothesis to be near the goal, like this. But don't be discouraged if you don't get the hypothesis right immediately. It usually takes lots of hypotheses to get it right. Probably version 1 won't be very good. So in our car example, because our first one was using a very good vehicle with square-shaped tires, that is now our baseline. If we test again, but the car's wheels are now round-shaped, if it gave us better results, which probably will, now we know that our version v1.1 was better than the version v1.0 with square-shaped wheels. But wait, the rims are now round-shaped, but the tires are not. So if we change the tires now in the next test and it works better, it doesn't only becomes a new baseline, it also becomes a major or macro baseline. It will not be only version 1.2, it will be 2.0 because we changed one variable completely. It's like saying that instead of having an engine, I'm gonna have a little horse, a hamster running there. And now step 4 will be repeating that last 3 steps. Of course, just as in nature and overall life, business, for example, also has fitness, which is the moat, so that people don't come in, of course, they don't steal your stuff. DNA, all the info behind your business, including your traits. Environment, which is most of it is taken by the market. Evolution, which is the ability of your business to adapt stuff that fits the market better. Now, iteration is evolution in the short term, and in the long term, it's just evolution. Our minds, body, and work, including business, iterate during their lifetime. And now I want to make it clear, make a web of knowledge, because you can't copycat your way into success, and you should know first principles about each thing that you learn and know how they relate to each other so that you can innovate. And in a nutshell, although I have talked about it in past videos, if you want to be independently thinking and having your own ideas like crazy, you simply need to learn independently. Why? Well, because if you hear someone talk about some information precisely and it gives results, well, sometimes you're gonna think, hey, maybe I can solve this myself. Once you have enough knowledge to think that you can solve that question alone. And when you solve that question alone, then you are now thinking independently, trying to innovate, and that's how you get ideas. Now, to make it clear, what that word is, productivity is the act of getting more output from less input. So when people talk about leverage, they're also talking about productivity. Just that leverage is the physical phenomenon that happens. Of course, you are actually being productive at lifting a rock with a lever, but it's practically the same thing. Now, have you ever wondered if you're bad at math, why the heck those people tell you that you need to learn math? Why do we use metrics? Why if I want to discover the secrets of the world, I have to know math? Look, the thing is that words are an extreme simplification of how much a thing is. Essentially, reality is based on how many things of something there is. So I can tell you, this is a wooden thing to drink stuff, and that is really ambiguous. But if I told you I have one of these things, I don't know what that is absolutely true. You cannot say I don't have one of this. When you describe what a thing is, you're trying to simplify how much of something here and there is, to the point that when combined, you form what you call a word. So let me shift for a moment to the number section, because numbers are reliable. If you're an English woman or man, and you show to a Japanese, a Russian, German, Portuguese, a Spanish, or another English man or woman that 2 plus 2 is 4, they all understand the same thing. And you can say the word burger, but if you want to make it to divide it into its fundamentals, the basics, it's actually a bun, a tomato, a lettuce, patty, and a bun. So therefore, words are not reliable completely, only for communication, because they are subjective. So there are many languages to mention the same thing, and there are many personal meanings even in the same language. I come from Colombia, and I know that in other countries the word monda is nothing. It's just the peel of a fruit. But in my country, or at least from where I come from, specifically, Monda is a really bad word. So words are useful for fast communication because humans tend to simplify things too much. Simple systems work exceptionally because they are operated by humans. For humans hate friction, and humans are 95% subconscious, probably, at least if you have heard about the studies about it, and it is an estimation, but only a tiny percentage of that, 5% of the entire body, is rebelling to build a life, study, build a business, etc. That is why you have so much friction, and that's why you hate it so much, at least your brain does. The less a system relies on a human, the more predictable. This is a simplification, but it makes sense because when you are not a human itself trying to put the work, instead it is machinery or an AI, that AI or machinery is not dealing with all the organic biological processes. And therefore you can get more throughput and more quality and more predictability over the stuff that you're making. So for example, a sales representative's performance is deeply volatile, whereas a factory worker might only supervise how a machine processes almost the same amount of inputs in a certain time frame to get an output. Now in business, the question on whether a system should be completely and wholly automated or delegated to a human depends completely on whether the output is a human action or not. If the desired result is just a human clicking on something like an ad, you need humans because humans sell to humans, not robots to humans. Only you can use it to make things faster, but at the end you need a human. But for you to wake up, you don't need a human. You can use an alarm, and it does work perfectly. So as I was saying, if I'm writing copy for an ad, leaving it entirely to AI depends on the quality of the steps and the inputs it receives. So right now, it is not the most effective way to write copy with AI, because an AI is a machine that produces outputs similar to humans, yes, but lacks some unique information that specific organic machine will have right when they are born. Look, the key thing here, and that is why people detect so easily when something is written by AI, it is that AI is based on tons of tokens, characters, text that is average. When you tell AI to make to make something of yours more creative or better, you're actually just telling him to make it better in the way that average people would understand better is. So yes, if you tell AI to make something, it's gonna make it creative, but it's something that needs more accurate steps that will end up producing a human-like output. And AI needs also better inputs, better information and mathematics. So a large language model, an LLM for example, is a machine that processes large texts that make an output that feels like predicting. So AI simply looks at the data it has access to. It sees that phrase, for example, the cat is on the mat, repeats like a zillion times in many places in the text you have given to him, and then it calculates what is the probability of that word, mat, being on the next phrase, the cat is on, blah blah blah. And if based on your context, the probability of mat being next on the sequence was high, the AI therefore will choose the word mat over fire. And this is why AI requires billions of data to function well. Now AI can be more objective than humans if it has more information than an individual, because it can predict the right stuff, the right next step, much better than a human, based on complete statistical patterns that are not biased by your own experiences, only the average. This reminds me of how to look at your performance look at the performance of someone else, like a machine. You have to look at the average, because if you look only at the lows and ups, then you're gonna be pretty frustrated. Because for example, 2 by 14 is 28. We know that, right? But it could also be 2 by 2 or 2 plus 8 and whatever combinations you have. But at the end, it's the same result. It's 24. And we measure by the results at the end. Therefore, we want to know what is the average, not only the ups and downs and the specific things that you're using to get the result. So basically, automations will deliver something that has your touch, as long as it uses to get the next step is biased in a way that it follows your intention. So therefore, practically and even technically, automation and AI can do the whole job for you and sound exactly like you. Even if you don't feel like it or you feel that's not gonna happen, it can with enough information, being biased enough, knowing what is your voice profile, knowing what you like, what you don't like, it can do it. Now I want to show you for a moment how we are related to AI in a very big sense. This is amazing. And this is very important because you need to understand how you work so you can be disciplined, focused, even if you don't feel like it as well, and you can be perseverant and stuff. But look, humans also predict the next step of a sequence just as AI does, at least in our current frameworks. Your brain has large servers of data. When your brain predicts what will happen, there is a synapse. Now this information is a little bit not updated, but I'm gonna just listen to me. A synapse, where in electricity there is gonna be a much bigger bonding because they are communicating. Just like if you have a friend, the more you talk with that friend, the bigger your relationship with that person is gonna be. The same thing happens but with nerves. And it works like this. For example, you see a message on Instagram and it is a stimulus that travels through your eye. It is a stimulus that travels through your eye. Stimulus produces a little electricity. Why? Well, because your nerves work like a hose. If I press here, then it's like a hose that you press, you step on, then electricity is gonna go to specific place much faster. And then the specific path, the pattern that electricity took is recognized and instantly makes you remember some things in the way like a leftover that are similar but not is exactly what you're searching for. That is when you have something in the tip of your tongue. And if there was not an existing wire that recognizes what that stimulus means exactly, it breaks free and creates a new wire with another neuron. This is called eureka or an aha moment. Since you met the person before, that wire was already oiled up and ready to receive you. Since your brain activated many neurons at once, your brain plays a pattern of his name, face, and voice all together because your brain is trying to search and look at all the files of that is related to that specific stimulus. So then you say, oh, it's that. This is called connectionism. And synapseplasticity is that it gets bigger the more you use the synapses, the connections between nerves. More specifically, neurons, sorry. Guess who controls most of this? Your subconscious. This is why also the older, the wiser people seem to be. They retain more information and the subconscious predicts better. Now, the data a human stores in its brain is mostly stored in the subconscious. Therefore, it usually comes out subconsciously as well. Essentially, at its biggest core, a subconscious prediction is just a prediction, and if it matches, it's also called an intuition. Intuition is fed by experience in its purest form. So you can predict something if you do it truthfully, if you try to do it aligning the most you can with reality, that is an intuition. But if you're making an assumption, or that prediction was based before on an assumption, it's just an assumption, it's not intuition. Now, something really cool as a bonus is that the subconscious makes you dream, so you stimulate crazy situations so that if they happen to you, you have some idea on how to act. Essentially, that is what I believe happens with dreams. So a curious fact is that seers were often women, because given that women were often liable of raising children more than men, they developed a sixth sense through evolution that makes them more aware of their surroundings and a greater communication with their subconscious. This is also a big part of the mother's intuition. Now, connecting with your subconscious is trainable. You can train to be more conscious of the cognitive biological processes that you have that also make you act in automatic ways. You don't always notice. And I think you simply do it by mindfulness and self-awareness. You can meditate, but as long as you're focusing on you, on not another thing outside of yourself, you can understand yourself better and have more self-awareness. Now, the subconscious is often referred as a famous, prideful, or past identity or inner child. And if you don't force the subconscious and instead you make it believe what your conscious believes, you will reduce friction by a lot when doing hard stuff that will bring you success. Just to make it clear, I am including all of this information because it has to do a lot with systems, because you want to understand how do you yourself work. But for now, just make this stick on your head the most you can so we can keep going on. Look, the subconscious, think of it as the founder of the company you're buying. He is the CEO whose culture and mission is survival. The CEO is very humble as long as what you sell and do works. And when I mean that you are the son of the subconscious CEO. At first, when you were a baby, you were mostly subconscious. Then the consciousness started developing itself over time. So genetically, you have many traits from the CEO. You are in the same brain. You work through synapses and neurons as well. So you know that when I say you, I'm talking to your conscious mind. This the CEO gives you approximately 5% of the equity. It's an estimation, of course, once he thinks you are mature enough. I don't know about you, but I had a wake up moment in my life. I had a really weird dream and woke up and said, let's start the day. That's literally what I said when I was like 3 years old. Or I know it feels like that was the first moment that I realized it was conscious on my mind. I don't know. You can leave some information about it on the comments. So you want to manage the entire company your way with a new operating system and new culture. So you present the new operating model to the CEO and negotiate with him to then execute and test the new model. You negotiate because if you pretend to only eat burnt bread for your diet 24/7, of course the CEO will immediately take over the company that is your body. But now if you got the selling skills, of course is useful enough to make the CEO believe in your culture and your operating system, it can make the entire company work towards that goal. Now remember, he is a CEO. He just made the entire company shift culture, playbook, systems, meeting rhythm by just snapping his fingers. He has to make constant announcements and all hands and inform everybody of the results so their employees and contractors believe it was the right decision and align with the work they are doing. If not, they would rebel and inform the CEO. That's why if your heart is going slower or faster than usual, your brain is instantly gonna notice it. It's analogical to that. So if you suck at selling in your operating system, the CEO might tell you to research further or just not accept it, or whatever excuse you have. Now you're his son. Just know about it. He cares about you. He loves you. But you will most probably end up doing what he wants you to do. If the CEO accepts it, implements it, but doesn't see the results you promised, he will first remember forever what happened with this silly project as any sane founder or CEO, and second, it will use the same operating system it was using because it is familiar, it is safe, it is functional, and it sells. And that same operating system, well, works really well. Maybe yours could have worked better, but it didn't, so we're gonna go back to the old system. So just a quick bonus, and this happens literally, it's just amazing. It happens the same with your clients, with leads, and with your own brain as well. We humans, we want certainty. We want predictability. That's why I'm making this video in the first place. I don't know if you have heard about that experiment where some people put workers that were waiting for a metro, for a train, and they didn't know how much they were gonna spend there. They knew that the train was gonna be delayed, but they didn't know how much. But they were desperate. They were wondering if they had to walk there or they were just wanting to report everything to the company of the subway and stuff. And then separately, with another constant at that point, they made another group be on the same waiting spot in another part, but they could see the time that was delayed, so they knew exactly that they had to wait 20 minutes. They were all calm. Even if they knew results were not going the best, they were okay with it. So mostly, communication is in even understanding yourself and trying to focus. It's just about clarifying things the most you can and framing everything through what other people want. So to put it in perspective, for personal growth, I want that thing that I'm doing, that project, that work, that business, to be the only meaningful thing for me right now. The only one. I want it to be clear what I have to do or what I actually want to do because I love it. And anything else right now is meaningless. It's pointless. I don't want to hear about it. I'm just focusing on this. Now, when it comes to communication with other people, it might sound that it is a bit trickier, but at the end, it's just about framing the stuff that you have innovated, that you're creating, through what they want, through what they already add their own meaning to. Because, of course, it's really hard to try to change the beliefs of other people. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're just going to frame the stuff that you already have in a way that aligns with the stuff that they already want. So a person, so for example, if you're a coach, if you're helping people with their belief, with their inner child and inner child healing, it's probably better to say that I'm gonna help you be more confident, more disciplined, more clear in your life, and peaceful and happy with yourself and all this stuff. But not telling them not even what they need, because it's just better to frame it through what they want and then give them what they need on the way. Now, if your project has success, the CEO will go all in. So it will inform the entire company, and therefore the company, your body, has officially incorporated the operating system and is giving the results that the CEO and the entire company also wants. Everybody wins. Now, actually going to numbers, this language is objective. Each step of a system can have a number. When we make a relation between two numbers, we get a metric. And it's simple to understand it. Each system has one number, even if it's the smallest one, or one system has even more little steps and subsystems and even more little numbers, because numbers are essentially how much of something there is, and that's it. So how much heat you have on your head, how cold you are, how much someone has responded to something, that's a frequency. That's how it's called in statistics. And the key about this is that numbers make the thing binary. People tell you to not be binary. I also believe it's a good thing, but at the end, if we want to be the most objective, actually, things either exist or they do not. So that is why numbers are terrifyingly realistic. And yes, they might be hard, but they are the language of the universe. It works terrifyingly well. Whereas words are being used because they are easy and fast, especially between humans. And so, for example, formula, especially an equation, is a thick folder, and the letters are placeholders for little subfolders. The numbers are the things that are hard-coded into the universe. You can't change them. They are constants. So I want you to understand something. The reason why evil and good exists in our life, why you think something is good or bad, whatever, it only exists because we add meaning to something and we want that to happen in our lives, usually because we want to survive. This means that we need to have vision, we need to have an intention, not only the function that exists even if you are dead, to know whether something is good or bad. But we only know it, first, if we have the vision, the thing that we want, and also if we know how much of something has happened and how close it is to what we want. So that is called, well, using metrics. So if something is off, we troubleshoot, which is walking through the process until we see a metric that feels off. And if it's off, we try to change one variable of that metric, test it, and use the scientific method until the metric goes to its good level. Therefore, metrics are essentially feedback in the actually simplest way to understand, because you are simplifying that you got this result into I got this amount of the result. And that also makes that if you talk to somebody with somebody else, they understand the exact same thing. And now finally, the 13 business systems. A business is a group of reliable and, if possible, automatic systems that attract people, deliver them results, upgrade those results, and make sure those results are compliant and aligned towards a purpose. You can divide it as it follows. First, cultural systems. identity, mindset frameworks, decision making, methodologies, accountabilities, culture. Now, governance. Here you have the financial, legal, filing, compliance info. Everything you need to operate in the most objective, truthful way in this bureaucracy that we need to help other people and do business. For productivity, we have hiring, automation, technology, SOPs. Then we have iterative. So we have feedback loops, data tracking, meetings. Then for awareness, we have outreach, content, paid advertising, ICPs. Then for capture, we have hooks, sales letters, lead magnets. We have conversions, which is assessments, CTAs, direct emails, which includes qualification because you're converting the mind of someone to be able to buy. Actually, in its etymology, as a bonus, conversion comes from a word in Greek that means to change your mind. So that's actually what conversion, at least in the context of human behavior, is. And you also have attendance, which is only hammering, reminders, case studies, maybe scarcity, but always very truthful way. Then commitment, sales scripts, objection handling, contracts, payments. Then we have onboarding, fulfillment, evangelism, which is a way of saying case study generation, testimonials, interviews, getting referrals. You can also have a program for that. And ascension, through upsells, cross-sells, and retainers. And now, if you hire people expecting for them to solve any of the problems that you have in one of your systems, expect high turnover and for them to give you their quit notice within the same month or week. If you think you only need to do more for a system to work, be careful, because you must have tested with volume for a pertinent time frame depending on the thing that you test. And if it's not in KPI, increase the quality of the thing by changing a variable at the time. So don't get me wrong, there is a thing that people argue about. Quality or quantity? What is better? I will argue, first start with quantity, because first you have to understand what quality even means for you specifically. And once you know what quality actually means, you can create a framework, you can create criteria, SKUs, and stuff like that, so you can now start trying to track that quality that you have. And then doing quantity, again, to test if that quality is actually qualified and gives you the results that you want. And then if it does, then you do even more quantity. Now just as a quick bonus, if you expect someone else to make the system, always walk through it no matter what happens, try to understand, apply the Pareto principle. 20% gives 80% of the results. Try to understand, but the thing is, even if you don't know about the thing that you're delegating. Now, because I care about you, I have decided to put together two completely free frameworks for you. The first one is my secret hierarchy of cognitive levels, so you can identify where your own thinking collapses, evolves, or becomes conditioned. The second one is something I personally use, called the FCAF decision framework. I use both frameworks to regulate emotional impulses, reduce stupid decisions, and don't let fear blind me to think more clearly under uncertainty. Both frameworks are completely free, transparent with you. It will sign you up for my email list, or you will receive occasional emails from me on how to convert thoughts into actions, leads into qualified clients, and chaos into predictability with the least friction possible. And even more occasionally, you will receive info about something that I'm selling, because if I think that something can accelerate your success, why not give it to you? Although, most of the things that all the emails that I give, all this stuff that I'm giving, it's just free. I just want you to have it. At the end, it's just tools that generally help me think more clearly, act intentionally, and I want you to have them for you to grow faster. And actually, it has more secret bonuses inside. I will let you discover yourself. At least 4 more frameworks or templates. And for example, now that I'm talking about systems, I left an SOP template there for you if you want it. So click on the first link of the description to get them. Share, please, if it gives you at least 1 eureka or more this video that you have already seen. It will help them, it's free, and it will make you seem like someone who consumes truly valuable content for growth and cares about other people's growth too. I stand for your best, because only that will matter, and take care.